Hey everybody, Jazzy here. This is the year 27 recap for Thrill of the Grill, my solo Warley world over on Twitch. It was an important year because at long last, it will no longer be a solo world. Today, I'm taming Wellington, my first ornery Beefalo. My intention with taking the time to domesticate a Beefalo was initially just to have something to do while I knock down beehives in the loot world, but the more I experience life in the constant with a Beefalo, the more I realize how deep of an impact having one of these around can make on practically every aspect of survival. So I'm approaching the Beefalo in the final couple days of summer. I'm bringing a bell, a Beefalo hat, a bundle of stone fruit, which I will never actually use, a brush, and a saddle. Let's bond our bell to the beef and let the journey begin. Wellington and I got off to a rough start. Lesson number 1, do not attempt to saddle a Beefalo while they are sleeping. It won't work. They will react as if you just shaved them while they're in heat. It's okay, we're learning. This is why we're here, Wellington. This is why we're here. So I'm feeding it about 8 twigs to get its obedience up and I can saddle it. It only needed about 6 because I'm also gonna brush it every day, which will raise obedience by 40%. So I'm gonna try to quickly give you my take on Beefalo domesticating, just so you understand what I'm doing here. Basically, there are 2 ways for Beefalo's domestication to rise. As long as it's either not completely starving or is getting ridden, it will gain about 0.1% domestication every 10 seconds. This means that as long as you are riding it constantly, there's no need to feed it exorbitant amounts of food every day. The only time you really need to go the feeding route is if you're trying to get a pudgy Beefalo which requires feeding, or a default Beefalo because riding it too often will give you a rider Beefalo. For both ornery and rider Beefalo though, you can safely ignore Beefalo's hunger. Now, I still need to feed it to keep its obedience up. A Beefalo can't be ridden unless its obedience is at least 50%. Brushing a Beefalo once per day increases obedience by 40%, and feeding it increases it by 10%. Because a Beefalo will only lose 50% a day, I really don't need to feed it more than like 1 to 2 twigs whenever it bucks me. And in the early days when it's bucking me off constantly, I don't even need to feed it every time I remount. So you can see I'm being very cautious with obedience and giving Wellington way more twigs than he actually needs. But if it saves me durability on a saddle, I don't mind topping him off more than I need to. Now, Year of the Beefalo changed a couple of very important Beefalo mechanics, which we will look at soon. But the most immediate change is that riders can now pick items up off the ground. The picking animation is slower than it would be on foot, but the benefit is that we can forage for more twigs to feed Wellington while riding. Before, you would need to dismount in order to collect, and that slowed down the whole process. Now, to train my Beefalo to be ornery, I'm going to be starting fights as often as possible. Beefalo gain ornery points by fighting, but also by taking damage. If you catch me tanking a few bat bites or bee stings, it's because it's part of the training and better to absorb hits from low damage mobs such as spiders and bats. I'm also picking a fight with some tree guards, but in the early training days, I need to be very mindful of Wellington's buck timer. Always remount before entering a fight, and if the fight drags on for a while, I'm gonna look for opportunities to back off and remount again in order to reset the buck timer. This will lower the chances of Wellington boosting me straight into the open arms of a haunted Christmas tree. A spider queen backed us into a swamp and we got smacked a few times from behind by a tentacle. Tentacles are one of the top killers of Beefalo, and for that reason I should know better going into a swamp with a less than fully domesticated one. If he gets attacked by a tentacle while dismounted, I would likely be forced to tank the tentacle to save his life, so might be easier to just stay away. We get a hound wave and I'm not super close to a sinkhole, so I need to fight them. I'm not quite ready to take on a hound wave with Wellington, so I'm gonna leave him with the bell for now while I lure the hounds away and kill them while on foot. If you need to leave your Beefalo for a moment, try to sneak in a few twigs before leaving just to lower the chances of a saddle getting shaken off by the time you come back. The next major perk recently added in Year of the Beefalo is that bonded Beefalo will follow the owner across shards and into caves. And because of this, I'm able to bring Wellington into the loot world where he's gonna spend the majority of his training busting down beehives and fighting bees for ornery points. It's something I would have wanted to do eventually, so might as well do it while taming a Beefalo. One downside of having 2 forest worlds is that the hound waves won't be in sync. The same way worm waves in the caves never sync with hound waves on the surface. So we're getting another hound wave just 2 days later. This time, I forgot to top off Wellington's obedience with twigs, and by the time I got back, he had dropped below 40% and shaken his saddle. This is actually fine because it doesn't lower domestication in and of itself. It just takes durability from the saddle. I'm carrying a bundle with materials to craft more saddles if needed, but I should also just try to keep it on his back if I can. Another thing I'm doing while taming is killing every single butterfly I see. Eventually, I will want to make a gossamer saddle which requires 68 butterfly wings. Side note, Maxwell's quote for the Gossamer saddle might be one of his finest. And believe it or not, even with the exorbitant price tag, this saddle is 100% worth the grind because it adds a 40% speed boost to Beefalo. I'm not going to use one until I fully tame Wellington because I do not want it losing durability during the taming process, but I can start to collect the wings now. I could use a construction amulet to craft one from 34 wings, but you know, as long as I'm fighting and riding, I'm just gonna kill all 68. Hey Wellington, you should know that in the past 9 days, you have been a more effective butter farm than my idiot cat has been in the past 1,000 days. That makes 3 butter from about 30 butterflies killed. I want butterfly wings and you give me butter. You're funny, Gabe. No, really, I'm laughing. Now here's a weird thing that happened. I came back to the main world and my Beefalo suddenly had a red butt. I was under the impression that Beefalo bonded to a bell will not go into heat outside of spring. So I'm a bit surprised at this, but very glad that I brought my Beefalo hat. Anyways, about half a day later, the red butt is gone. So maybe it was a visual glitch? I don't know, but I have also heard that if this happens to your Beefalo, you can bring them to another shard and that will also bring them out of heat. If anyone has more info about this, I would love to hear it. Gabriel told me to kill a koala with the Beefalo. I had no reason to suspect ill intentions, so I did it, and what do you know? Koalafants have a slight herd mentality, and they'll attack any threat to another koalafant, the same way Beefalo protect Beefalo. There's something you'd never know if you weren't collecting dozens of these poopers in your world. Finally, we get a hold of 68 butterfly wings and are able to craft our gossamer saddle. This thing is expensive, so until I have a Beefalo that will behave himself at all times, the saddle will stay in the pen. Okay, that'll be your graduation gift, buddy. Let's just get through finals week first. Now, I know that the question on your mind since Barley first began this smelly odyssey has been, will a Beefalo eat glowberry mousse? Was there ever a reason to doubt the power of worm pudding to transform a cow into an unnaturally oversized xenon light bulb? You could say he just upgraded his tail lights? The unsubscribe button is right below. The next hidden Beefalo perk, picking cactus. Damages Beefalo, not the rider. I like to imagine Wellington like wrapping his giant hairy paws around the fruit and wincing ever so slightly as he hands the cactus flesh back to you. But this is actually a fairly safe way of earning ornery points because the damage is so light. A few days later, we get another hound wave. And this time, before I leave him, I top off his obedience with a few grass. So by the time I get back from dealing with hounds, about a third of a day later, he still has his saddle intact. He slept too, so he probably wasn't losing obedience during part of that time anyway. I was searching for Chester and uncovering most of the loot world map during this time. Day 1835, we finally find the eye bone right off the brick road in the middle of the swamp. One of the last bits of uncovered land left on the map. And moments later, Wellington poofed! Ladies and gentlemen, a fully domesticated ornery Beefalo. He's perfect. The whole process took about 15.5 days, which is a very good time. The max domestication a Beefalo can earn each day is about 4.8, plus brushing every day will add another 1.7%. That means brushing consistently can lower your total domestication time by about 35%. So if you have the means, definitely try to have a brush for the taming process. It is so worth the resources. But now comes the most important moment of this intricate taming process, and that is choosing an outfit for my new stank bro. I'm gonna go with a straight up formal attire because the name Wellington just exudes sophistication and dignity. So no rainbow ribbons for this gentle beef. We dress to impress around here. Well, this has been one hell of a recap. We haven't hit winter yet. So again, I need to break up this year into 2 parts. But I'm glad I got to really focus on the process of taming a Beefalo. I learned a lot of new things from the experience, and I am very much looking forward to taking on some bosses with Wellington in the days to come. So stay tuned for the remainder of year 27. Coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and maybe next time, we can catch you live over on Twitch. Take care.